Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
My anus is bleeding!
He can't sit down.
They call them dumps, big massive dumps.
Got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Beta bear.
Get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
Don't you ever do that. Don't you ever do that. I tell you don't do it.
Oops.
We're under attack. It is an alien force, not of this world. It's not human intelligence.
Bullshit.
Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
Bullshit.
It's not a salami sandwich.
Disappointed!
Repeat the line.
Disappointed!
How you like that, boy?
No.
Give me a break.
Stop it.
Fired.
Fired! Fired!
Bitch, move it along.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Oh my God! He admitted it!
Combination. Waldorf Nation. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. It's Wednesday. We got a fun show for you today. Fun and interesting, including people pushing back against transphobes. Fun. Pride Month. Gotta love it. Where actually people are fighting back against some of the weirdo anti-trans rhetoric. In fact, two excellent stories on that, including a judge striking down, at least temporarily, Ron DeSantis' anti-trans law, ban on gender-affirming care. Awesome. So that's a fun story. I'm gonna enjoy that, and I'm sure you will too, because some of the statements from this judge is awesome. I love it. All right. We have that. We also have, of course, right-wing alleged grifters. Fun, as usual. And, oh, look, Republicans against indoctrination. Unless it's, indoctrination that they approve of. Okay. So anyway. Why don't we, before we dive into it, please like and share. Very important that you do that. America pays for Ukrainian healthcare, and this is today's focus. Interesting. Well, I would love for America to pay for America's healthcare as well. So it's interesting how you bring this up. Weird random chatter. Do you have an issue with people having healthcare? I think healthcare is a human right. Do you disagree? Do you disagree with humans having healthcare, or just certain humans having healthcare? I don't know what your point is. Like, what's the issue here? How's the air? Seems fine. Much better than New York City and Washington D.C. Sunny skies, looking all right here. So, unfortunately, not so well in other parts of the country. So everybody who is in these affected areas, please stay safe. All right. So, orange skies in NYC. Yes, everyone in that area. Again, please stay safe if you can. A bit hazy in the Upper Peninsula. Well, I'm not there, so that's unfortunate as well. All right. Anyway. Why don't we jump into the first story here, including, or I should say we're going to have a conversation about right-wing grift. Leaders of a pro-Trump group allegedly out to stop fraud, in this case, voter fraud, is being accused of their own kind of fraud. According to a complaint filed to the IRS, conservative activists Catherine Engelbrecht and Greg Phillips allegedly used their nonprofit group, True the Vote, to personally enrich themselves while spreading nonsense election conspiracy theories. Wonderful. Now, this is, again, according to a complaint from the nonprofit watchdog group Campaign for Accountability, who has called for an investigation into True the Vote. So all of this right now are allegations. But they're very interesting allegations, and let's dive into them. So now, the complaint claims that True the Vote may have violated state and federal laws when they used donations. By the way, they're supposed to be a charitable organization, used donations to issue loans to the people running the organization. Engelbrecht, its founder, and lucrative contracts to its longtime director, Greg Phillips. Now, Texas law states directors of nonprofits cannot receive loans from their own organizations. Engelbrecht, who was a director and an employee at the time, regularly received loans from the so-called nonprofit, ranging from about $40,000 to $113,000, according to various tax filings, on top of earning a salary. But it's a nonprofit, guys. Nonprofit. Okay. Now, Phillips, who first joined True the Vote as a board member back in 2014, received at least $750,000 related to a so-called research analysis contract, the details of which we don't have any idea of. What did they do with the money? What kind of research were they doing? That's an open question, and one that we don't have any answers to. And the reason, of course, that we're able to ask these questions is because since it is a nonprofit, we're supposed to see this data. We're supposed to see where the money is going and what it's being used for. There's supposed to be a little bit of transparency when it comes to these organizations and their spending through their tax filings, and this group apparently not keeping good track. For whatever reason. So now there's more. The organization had also failed to disclose, according to the complaint, payments to insiders in its tax returns, including excessive legal bills paid to its general counsel at the time, who filed election-related lawsuits in 4 states. Their lawyer, former lawyer, who is now, by the way, suing them, James Bopp Jr., was paid approximately $280,000 over a 7-day period related to filing and supervising attorneys on election-related lawsuits to challenge the results in key states, according to court records. There were 7 lawsuits planned. Bopp only filed 4 and quickly withdrew them. And so, all that money, $280,000 for lawsuits that actually really didn't happen. Kind of sketchy. What's going on here? Again, as I mentioned, he is suing True the Vote for breach of contract for nearly $1 million in unpaid legal bills dating back several years, according to court records obtained by ProPublica. True the Vote has countersued Bopp's law firm, denying unpaid invoices and accusing it of engaging in, quote, fraud and substandard lawyering. Your lawyering is substandard. Weird. Now, let's go to the tax returns, because I think that's one of the most interesting parts here. So now, in 2019, one of their tax returns got flagged for being weird. Super weird. In fact, there were 2 different tax returns for the same year. The organization had apparently given a reporter and the IRS 2 completely different forms. I mean, not 2 completely different forms, but the same form filled out 2 completely different ways. Now, the organization says, oh, no, we made a mistake. We're going to amend that. It is 2023, and so far, it has not been amended. It has not been corrected. There is no information here that has been updated. Now, True the Vote also did not report Bop's legal contract, again, over $280,000, and the alleged, apparently up to $1 million that he was owed in their tax returns. Now, that is required for contracts above $100,000. This was a legal contract for legal services, apparently, or allegedly rendered. I don't know, it's looking a little weird. It's looking a little weird. Such disclosure lapses, they say, heighten suspicion regarding whether True the Vote or its current or former officers and directors intended to conceal the payments from the public or IRS, the complaint says. Ms. Engelbrecht, as president of True the Vote, appears to have voluntarily and intentionally filed a false, incorrect, and incomplete Form 990. Oh, but, well, they would never do that, would they? Oh, no, I mean, doing any sort of kind of financial fraud or trying to hide money, any kind of grift? I mean, who would do such a thing? I mean, this group is supposed to stand up for the integrity of American democracy, working with stand-up folks like Dinesh D'Souza, who, by the way, had featured their work very heavily in his film 2000 Mules. Oh, what's that? Oh, D'Souza, convicted of making illegal campaign contributions, doing his own kind of fraud, until he was pardoned by Trump, who then, again, also makes false election fraud claims. Now, okay. So here's the thing. D'Souza, Trump, and True the Vote make all these wild claims. And yet, when it comes to court, they can never seem to present all the massive amounts of evidence that they claim that they purport to have in a court of law. They never seem to be able to present that information. Weird. Oh, it's because, there is no actual evidence. But hey, just saying so apparently works really, really well at separating the rubes from their money. And it's what it is. This entire election fraud narrative whips up right-wingers who cannot fathom that sometimes they lose elections. And, some of those people will open up their wallets to grifters. On the right, I've called it a target-rich environment. A lot of people willing to give up their money to scammers. Look, they gave Trump millions of dollars for so-called election defense, which went into his pocket, of course. They gave Kari Lake millions of dollars to challenge the election in Arizona. She lost every single case. In Arizona also, the cyber ninjas were paid with taxpayer money to audit the election. Guess what they found? No fraud. Weird. Weird how that works out. Huh. But here's the thing. Despite all this massive amount of evidence that there is no election fraud, no mass voter fraud, or anything like that, MAGA doesn't care. They're in an alternative reality. That said, a lot of these people that are running these organizations, they're in that reality. But when it comes to the court, when it comes to taking their claims to court, or in a sort of the legal system, they have to operate in reality. And that's it. And by the way, if you don't operate in reality, you can get in legal trouble. You can get into legal trouble. In fact, a Georgia voter sued the pair and D'Souza for defamation because he said he was wrongfully accused of committing voter fraud. State investigation into that case found that the voter was dropping off ballots for himself and family members. That happens to be illegal. So, no, he was not a paid mule of George Soros or whatever nonsense that they believe. The organization also got in trouble after failing to produce any evidence of voter fraud in Arizona when former Arizona Attorney General Mark Brnovich asked for it in 2022. He's like, okay, you're making some claims here, and so why don't you give us some information to back it up? Any sort of evidence, please give us evidence. And they had nothing. They didn't give over any evidence because they didn't have any evidence that could stand up to scrutiny. That's it. It's just vague innuendo, edited YouTube videos, and weirdo claims. That's it. So now, as far as True the Vote is concerned, it looks like there's quite a bit of stuff that, you might want to look into. I, for one, would not be surprised if any of this turns out to be true, having another conservative group get caught up in the grift. But wait, there's more. Turns out it might even be worse. There's more grift, even more grift. In January, ProPublica and the Dallas Morning News reported that Engelbrecht and Phillips had created yet another charitable organization called the Freedom Hospital. Oh, so now what is this? Well, apparently the aims are pretty good. It said that they're going to help children and elderly people affected by the war in Ukraine get medical care. Now, that would be a great organization, be a great thing to do. It turns out, though, that it never happened. The website for this charity has since been taken down, but it claimed to have raised halfway to $25 million for a mobile hospital. Wow, that's a lot of money. Wow. Well, it'd be great, except that, it doesn't seem to be real. Attorneys for Engelbrecht and Phillips claim that, the clients, well, they only raised, $12.5 million, but they actually raised about $268. Wait. So your goal was $25 million. You claim to have been half that. And then the attorneys come out and say, actually, you raised only about $268. Now, lawyers said that donations were returned at Mr. Phillips' direction. So let's just look at the numbers for a second. So as I mentioned, half of 25 million is 12.5 million. Now that's a lot more than the $268 raised through PayPal. What happened to the rest of the alleged $12,499,732? Where is it? Either they lied about raising that much money, or they stole it. Now, I would actually think that it's more, personally, I think it's more of a lie. Because I don't know if there's a lot of right-wingers out there that actually would care about helping people get health care. That's just my personal opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being too unfair, especially for, people in Ukraine. Conservatives actually caring about them because, to be fair, there are conservatives out there that are like, well, obviously, yes, I do care about people in Ukraine, and oppose the Russian invasion. But then, of course, there's a lot of right-wingers that are very, very pro-Russia for some reason. That said, I don't know what happened. This is going to have to be, looked into, investigated, and we'll see what happens. Again, these are allegations. I do think they warrant a fair investigation. But if they are true, or if some of them happen to be true, well, it wouldn't surprise me. It would be yet another right-wing group abusing the idea of a nonprofit organization and using it to personally enrich themselves, while, ironically, pretending to fight for integrity. Apparently, if this is true, they don't seem to understand what the word integrity actually means. Shock. Okay. Moving on. Let's go to Marjorie Greene hating America. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene seems to think that America is such a horrible, dangerous place that migrants shouldn't come here. Mainly because she's worried about their safety.
That you say the reason why people are coming to America today is because of violence, food insecurity, severe poverty, corruption, climate change, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Did you know that there are over 500,000 homeless people in the United States today? And as a matter of fact, the homeless population rose significantly since 29. That's for Americans. So we have homelessness here in America. Natural disasters. Talk about climate change. This is the 4th largest country in the world. We have an extremely diverse climate. We have a wide range of natural disasters. 97 natural disasters occurred in 2021. I don't think this is very safe for migrants here in America. We had 97. How many are they having in their country? These natural disasters include wildfires, heat waves, droughts, flash floods, winter storms, cold waves, tropical cyclones, and on and on and on. But yet they need to come to our country because of climate change? That doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not a safe country either, by the way. In America, there were 1,313,000 violent crimes in the U.S., and that was in 2020. I can't imagine what the numbers are since then, since crime has come up. I think that you need better reasons if you're going to try to let a bunch of people in the U.S. using a handy-dandy app where you don't track imports than climate change, because that is not an excuse people are buying.
Okay. Wow. There's a lot here. Okay. First, the idea that Marjorie Taylor Greene suddenly cares about the well-being of migrants is hilarious. Seriously. Wow. Of course she's being disingenuous about caring about migrants. Oh, you shouldn't come here. It's so incredibly dangerous to come to America. Because we have all these terrible things that are happening in America right now. I mean, look at the level of crime, which she then, of course, blames on immigrants as well. Okay. No, again, being disingenuous. Not only is she disingenuous about that, but apparently so is her alleged newfound care for the unhoused population. Some of them, of course, suffer from mental illness, addiction, or, of course, they can't afford rent because rents are sky high. Housing is unaffordable in a lot of major cities. It's too expensive for many people to live. Wages are not high enough for average people. I can go on and on. Now, has Marjorie Greene ever done anything to really help any of those people? No. No. She's opposed pretty much every piece of legislation that would actually help average people, to help the unhoused, to help veterans, things like that. By the way, when it comes to children, remember when she was raging about baby formula being allegedly sent to the border, which actually wasn't baby formula, something else? You're helping migrant children over American babies. And then, by the way, she also voted against a bill that would help low-income mothers be able to afford baby formula. Yeah. So, there's that. But okay, so she brings up part of this is climate change, right? For one, again, hilarious because she's a climate change denier. We know this. I've talked about this before. But now decides to use climate change as an argument against migrants. We've got all this climate change happening in this country, and it's really, really terrible here as a result of all this and all that and the crime. And America, terrible place. Why would you ever want to come here? Very curious argument here. So now, climate change, I don't know if you know this, but it doesn't just affect the United States, it affects the world. It affects all countries, by the way, in different ways. Of course, we're being impacted by climate change, but the vital difference here between the United States and, for example, say one random low-income country, I'll pick Costa Rica. Not to pick on Costa Rica, it's a beautiful place, but, obviously they don't have the amount of resources that the United States has. So now the vital difference between, again, these two things is just that, the resources. Smaller and, lower GDP countries do not have the resources available to them to adapt to the changing climate. And that, of course, is going to cause all sorts of problems. social issues like unrest, violence, revolt, even eventually civil war, mass migration, all this stuff. And, the other thing, too, is Costa Rica, again, and not to pick on y'all, but you did not cause climate change. So, again, why should people in the global south, why should they be barred from coming into the United States as a result of climate change when their countries, again, did not create climate change or did not exacerbate climate change? Hey, you know who has had the most impact on climate change? Hold.
USA, USA, USA.
Yeah. The United States is number 1 for putting out the most CO2 emissions in the history of the world. Now, this is according to data from a carbon brief analysis looking at the release of carbon dioxide by country. And they found that since 1850, the U.S. has released more than 509 gigatons of CO2 since, again, 1850, and is responsible for the largest share of historical emissions with some 20% of the global total. Wow. Yeah. So China is a distant second with 11%. They have a much larger population than we do, by the way. Russia is in third with 7%, Brazil 5%, and Indonesia 4%. Meanwhile, large post-colonial European nations such as Germany and the UK account for 4% and 3%, respectively, of the global total, not including overseas emissions under colonial rule. So, that's kind of how that breaks down. Looks like, man, United States, we're responsible for a lot of the emissions. Yikes. So now, why is this important? Well, since we are, the main driver of rapid climate change, by putting out all these emissions, having our corporations run rampant, run wild, doing pollution, it seems only fair that if we are one of the main drivers of the problem, that we be part of a solution. Or at the very least, take in some of the climate refugees from that, since we, of course, did prosper. I mean, one of the reasons the United States became so wealthy is because we were able to exploit resources, not just our own resources, but other nations' resources as well, via colonialism and imperialism. And so it would kind of make sense that some of that responsibility falls onto us. Not all of it, but some of it. I would say most of it. But again, you also have the other countries, China, who's industrializing as well, and it has put out a lot of emissions. And so now, I think that's, look, it's reality. Okay? Now, the last thing I want to say, by the way, is Marjorie Taylor Greene saying America is not great? I mean, it seems to be the implication here. I mean, she just pointed out a lot of the issues in this country. I mean, she's saying this place is terrible? Why would you ever want to come here? Migrants, why? We've got so many problems. It's so dangerous for you. I care so much. I care. So don't come here. Don't come. Don't come. It's quite the strange argument, by the way, coming from a so-called patriotic American. But I suppose, at the end of the day, her love for America is only eclipsed by her hatred of certain kinds of immigrants. Okay. We do have problems, and it's partly because she's in Congress. Only partly. But, I think you and I, we all agree that the main problem here is corporate money in politics. Basically, the argument she made is not the own she thinks it is. Funny how that works out, isn't it?
Peachtree dish.
Fun. A witness during a hearing on ESG policies got obliterated for making false claims about transgender people.
And one of the things that you said in your information here that you provided was that the dangers of ESG include promoting gender transitions for children. And I want to know, do you really believe that garbage?
It's not about believing, it's a matter of fact.
So you believe that investing strategies are actually a secret, it's weaponized to support and promote gender transition for children. I just want to, is essentially that what you're saying? Or do you just use it as another opportunity to beat up on children? So do you believe this?
I'm not the one beating up on children. It's the people who are promoting gender transitions in children that are potentially harming them.
Well, so let me tell you, if I could, let me tell you where I was, where I stepped out. And this is why I'm bringing it up. I stepped out to sit down with parents of trans kids from states that have come after their kids, and now their kids can't get the level of care that they deserve and need. And they literally said, when you leave this room, could you please, the next time you're in a room with someone bringing up yet again our children and our families as some kind of boogeyman, that you will actually stand up for us. And literally, I didn't think it would take less than a half hour. I left that hearing, here I am. I didn't know I would have such an opportunity.
Well, you know, America 2023, apparently that opportunity is everywhere. Now, that was Vermont Representative Becca Balint, and that was awesome. She's the first woman and openly LGBTQ lawmaker to represent Vermont, and she asked a question that a lot of us were hoping that they would ask, like, what are you doing? Do you believe this? Do you actually believe this stuff? And apparently, allegedly, they do. Why do I say allegedly? I think there's a deeper reason here. But first, she says, well, it's a fact. It's a fact. ESG is trying to do the gender affirming, is trying to trans your children. What? That doesn't make any sense. That's not reality. I mean, it's ESG is not even involved in trans healthcare. I don't know how these things are linked. They're not related at all. They're just not related at all. Now, what is ESG? It's basically a framework for investors to help them understand how an organization could manage risk and opportunity when it comes to sustainability. For example, environmental stuff, environmental protection, impact on society, and stakeholders, right? And how they can align that goal with shareholders. So now, of course, generally, stakeholders and shareholders do not see eye to eye. Mainly, shareholders are the ones that want to make profit at basically any cost to the stakeholder, not to themselves, to the stakeholder. So okay, but anyway, now as I mentioned, I think on that front, on sustainability, there's a lot of work to do. I think the government should be doing regulation of corporations when it comes to environmental stuff to make sure that they do not openly pollute and do reduce their emissions. And ESG is one of those things where I think it's a little bit of greenwashing, like, oh, we have an ESG mission statement, we're gonna be carbon neutral, but that's more of like a scam. Like, for example, oh, we're don't worry, we're gonna buy carbon credits that just allow us to pollute more. We just have to pay a little extra for it. Well, no, it's not helping. It's not doing anything. But anyway, The right wing, however, has taken ESG, and they've turned this into another weirder conspiracy about how it's transing your kids. Wait, what? Again, that's literally impossible. You can't do that. But apparently, that's the argument they're going to go with. Now, Balint in this next video then proceeds to call out the weird obsession they have with trans kids.
But it feels like every single hearing that I am in, whether it is in oversight or whether it is in budget or whether it is in a subcommittee, somehow the witnesses find a way to bring in trans children into whatever conversation we're trying to have here.
Yeah. It's almost as if, they're obsessed with talking about the genitals of trans children. I mean, this wasn't an issue until the right wing brought it up and made it pretty much their entire platform. And it's not even popular with the voters. So I don't quite understand what the motive here is, other than, I guess, to cover for everything else. That witness, by the way, is Mandy Gunsakara. I don't know how to say her name. But she had served in the Trump administration and had done some interesting things when she was in the EPA. Turns out she had pushed Trump to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement. He did. And then roll back environmental rules like the Clean Power Plan, which were, again, designed to prevent corporations from polluting your community. So that's who she is. And I'm guessing that's probably the real reason she's railing against ESG. And she's using the, trans kids argument because she doesn't really have anything else. Now, here's the thing, right? So companies have put themselves at risk for civil lawsuits from stakeholders if they lie about things like being, carbon neutral. We care about the environment. We're green and sustainable. And when they turn out not to be, there are people that get mad. There are environmental groups that take them to court and say, well, you are doing false advertising. Because it turns out there are Americans who look at this stuff and say, this is good. You're being more sustainable. That means I will buy your more sustainable product. And it turns out not to be sustainable. Now, Bloomberg Law noted in an article earlier this year, back in February, that as consumers become more interested in the environmental attributes of products and services, they may seek to base their purchase decisions on advertised green benefits. But if those green benefits are not actually benefits, if they're just lying about it, then yeah, that's going to put them at risk for lawsuits. Dan & Waters, for example, is litigating a consumer protection lawsuit alleging that the carbon neutral claim on the label of their Evian water is false and misleading. Another example is a utility company who claimed that natural gas was clean. No, natural gas is not a clean energy. When you burn natural gas, that's going to release methane, a greenhouse gas, again, linked to climate change, one of the things. And so calling it clean when it's not, I mean, you might as well just be like Donald Trump calling it clean coal, Clean coal, meaning they're taking out coal, they're going to clean it. They're just going to scrub all the nasty stuff off and burn it 100% clean. No, that's not real. And you can't go out and say that stuff, market that to consumers, and then, knowing that it's not true, that it's false advertising that will open you up to lawsuits. So how does this relate to ESG? Well, ESG is basically corporations saying, yeah, we got to figure out how to not do that, how to not make ourselves liable to lawsuits, and still make as much money as possible. Because again, that is the main point of corporations, is to extract as much profit for their shareholders as possible. That's the whole point. That's why they incorporate their profit-making machines. And so if you keep getting sued all the time for lying about your products, that's going to ruin your PR. People are not going to want to buy your product. And of course, that's going to cost you as well in legal, legal fees. And so, yeah, you don't want to do that. That's why these companies are doing ESG. Again, it's just all risk management stuff. Okay. So now this is, by the way, why Republicans are going to war with ESG as well as DEI programs, diversity, equity, inclusion programs. So that's another thing that's being used and incorporated into corporations to, again, avoid lawsuits, this time discrimination lawsuits from people who are Black or LGBTQ or a mixture. And, you know, again, generally groups that happen to be discriminated against in the workplace. DEI and ESG are just those things to say, how do we avoid effing up and getting sued? That's really all it is. So, but again, people like this woman do not want corporations to have to do these things to be more sustainable, to reduce pollution. And they don't want corporations to have to, you know, be careful not to discriminate against potential employees or employees that are actually there. Now, most Americans think these are good things, you know, not discriminating and actually trying to be more sustainable, a little bit cleaner. We like fair hiring practices. But parts of the right-wing base, unfortunately, do not agree. So like, no. We like it when you discriminate against people. In fact, we're discriminating against trans people literally right now by associating them falsely with being pedophiles. What? No, we love that. We love corporate pollution. We love corporations self-regulating. We love it that the meat industry, you know, allows for hair and feces and nails to be in your hamburger. What? We love it. We love it. We hate corporations being at all controlled or regulated by the government. And so they have combined these two different things. They've said, hey, we hate trans people, and we're going to use that as a cover in order to help corporate donors. So there it is. Now, again, as I mentioned, they falsely wanted to accuse the LGBTQ plus community of grooming kids, being pedophiles, turning them trans. But that's like literally impossible. You can't make someone want to change their gender identity. That is not a thing. The only people that are, at the end of the day, hurting the children are the right-wingers who are trying to deny trans children gender-affirming care that they need. And it's even more sickening that they're doing this. A lot of them are, at least the ones that are higher up and perpetuating these lies, okay, and disseminating to average voters. Doing so that only so they could protect their donors, protect corporations from regulation. Pretty bizarre. And again, gross. Profiteering from poor is theft in an immoral way. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Propane is still cleaner than charcoal. Yeah, but you can't just say that it's completely clean. Like, you have to be a little bit more, you know, clear on that. Because some people will take it literally. Oh, what they say it's clean. It's clean coal. It must be clean. It burns clean, right? No. Yes, you can have things that are cleaner than other things, but it doesn't mean that it's good. Anyway. If you see a rainbow, you become gay. Everyone knows that.
We have to keep our country gay.
Cleaner in the terms of combustion and extraction. Still, yeah, cleaner, but not clean. All right, anyway. Let's go to good news. We have good news. And what is a pretty big rebuke to Governor Ron DeSantis and the Republican Party's war on transgender Americans, specifically children, a federal judge has put a temporary stop to Florida's ban on gender-affirming care for trans youth. So this is fantastic. Judge Robert Hinkle, who serves in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Florida, just delivered a scathing 44-page ruling against Florida's SB 254, as well as the Florida Medical Board's prohibition on gender-affirming care for both minors. And by the way, SB 254 had extended that to banning it for adults as well. So now let's get to some of the best parts. He wrote this. Simply, quote, "The elephant in the room should be noted at the outset. Gender identity is real. The record makes this clear." Simple as that. The overwhelming weight of the medical authority, he notes, supports treatment of transgender patients with GnRH agonists and cross-sex hormones in appropriate circumstances. So now the state of Florida actually made the argument that, all those medical associations that are always quoted as supporting, gender-affirming care, they're just biased. Do you have any evidence of bias? I mean, I know reality tends to have sometimes a left-leaning bias, but where's the evidence that this is bias and that in fact there is no that gender-affirming care not good? Well, where is it? They don't have it, and so they made it up. In fact, the state made the argument again that these medical associations are biased, and then used data from a biased organization. I'm not kidding. As Erin Reed notes in her Substack, Florida tapped doctors from something called the American College of Pediatrics, which is not a real college. It's actually a fake science organization that pushed debunk gay conversion therapy. Again, gay conversion therapy proven not to work. In fact, one of the founders of gay conversion therapy came out as gay and was like, "Oh yeah, this whole thing doesn't work. No, it doesn't work. No, not at all." Yeah, okay. Well, there you go. So now, court documents showed that doctors from the American College of Pediatricians also had manipulated research findings so that the state of Florida could arrive at the final conclusion of ban gender-affirming care. Well, there it is. Now, Judge Hinkle wrote, quote, "If ever a pot called a kettle black, it is here." Now, he also pointed out several examples of discriminatory intent among lawmakers who passed the bill. So this is a Florida lawmaker going on the record, and here's what he said. This is Republican Representative Webster Barnaby, who earlier this year, again, in promoting this ban on gender-affirming care, referred to transgender people as, quote-unquote, demons, mutants, and imps. Yeah, that would seem to be that you have a very negative opinion of trans people. I mean, so your intent in banning trans, gender-affirming care for trans youth and later on trans adults seems to be driven by your hatred of trans people. I guess it's just it's one of those things where,
oh my God, he admitted.
Yeah. Gee. But there's more. Oh, by the way, demons, mutants, and imps. Oh my. Wow. Okay. Now, Hinkle then also dove into the detransition argument, pointing out that Florida couldn't even find a detransitioner to testify in this case. He writes, "Regret is rare indeed. The defendants have offered no evidence of any Florida resident who regrets being treated with GnRH agonists or cross-sex hormones." Oh, wait, you couldn't find a single person, a single detransitioner? Yeah, that's because, first of all, there's a pretty small amount of people who are even identify as transgender in this country, and an even more minuscule amount of people who detransition. And of course, the reasons for this very rare detransition, for the people that actually do choose to transition, I think the 0.1 or 1% of all people who actually do transition, they do so because of bullying and abuse that they received for transitioning. Social, societal pressure, family pressure. So bigotry, essentially. No wonder Florida couldn't find a single person to support their detransition argument that actually detransition. Judge Hinkle also pointed to recent studies showing a 98% persistence rate among transgender youth, saying that, of course, once they make the decision to transition, they continue to transition, and they are happy to transition. Yeah. Now, there's another Republican argument that they love to make against trans people is, parents' rights. So now, normally, Republicans are parents' rights. Parents have ultimate fundamental rights over their children, and we need to have the parents go and into the classrooms and take control of what the children are learning. Parents' rights. Except that when it comes to supporting a trans child in Florida, if you do that, then they call you a child abuser and then threaten to take away your children, allowing the state to literally abduct your trans child. Oops. So much for parents' rights. Now, the judge asserted that by blocking parents from controlling their children's medical care, the government of Florida has violated their rights as parents. And because the state showed no rational basis to ban gender-affirming care, the law is unconstitutional under the rights of due process. So literally unconstitutional. Yeah. Now, the best part goes back to this statement, where basically it's a challenge. Quote, any proponent of the challenge statute and rules should put up or shut up. Do you acknowledge that there are individuals with actual gender identities opposite their natal sex, or do you not? Adding, dog whistles ought not to be tolerated. I love it because saying, since gender identity exists, if you discriminate against them by banning medical care that they need, using methods, of course, that have been used by cisgender Americans, including children, for decades, then you are violating transgender people's constitutional rights. And that's what it comes down to. That there's no trans agenda. Okay? What there is civil rights. That's all this is. This is a fight to ensure transgender people have civil rights. It's just that simple. Okay? And look, the right wing finally, Florida specifically, but transphobes and all over the country, they're not doing this to protect the children. They don't care about the children. This doesn't protect children at all. It doesn't protect cis children, because obviously you cannot trans a cis child. That is not something that you can do. And what it actually does is harm trans children by increasing the likelihood that they will harm themselves or commit suicide. That's the reality of the situation. If you care about children, if you care about protecting children, you would protect trans children. Cis children are not in danger here. They're far more in danger of being involved in a school shooting or dealing with the effects as they continue to grow up of runaway climate change, pollution. That's the reality. But of course, none of this matters. Reality does not matter to Ron DeSantis, who is again using bigotry and ignorance as a way to avoid doing anything that is going to help make people's lives materially better. And of course, to amass for himself more personal power and propel his bid to become president. Okay. One last story here. We're going to talk about indoctrination. Oh boy. The people who, for decades, have been claiming that public schools are centers for indoctrination of children have just set up a school to indoctrinate children. Of course. Now, according to Truth Out, a state school board in Oklahoma has voted to approve what would be the nation's first publicly funded religious school. Now, the application to form the school, an online public charter school that would serve K through 12, was submitted by the Catholic Archdiocese of Oklahoma. And in their application, they do not hide the purpose of it. In the vision and purpose section of the application, they write, "The Catholic school participates in the evangelizing mission of the church and is the privileged environment in which Christian education is carried out." What is Christian education? What is that? I mean, I hear that and I think indoctrination. If I'm wrong, please let me know. Now, that said, I have no problem with Christian schools. What I have a problem with is taxpayer funding going to public religious themed schools. And it doesn't matter which religion it is. It's unconstitutional. Even knowing that, though, the statewide virtual charter school board has approved the application of the St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Virtual School by a 3-2 vote earlier this week. How could they vote for something that is so incredibly unconstitutional, violating the First Amendment? Turns out, might have been a little drama involved. So now, this isn't the first application. This is a second application from this religious school. That first one was actually unanimously rejected back in April. So now, they, after the rejection, they revised and then resubmitted their application, and it was approved. Now, the drama comes into the play because it turns out Oklahoma House Speaker Charles McCall, who's a Republican, appointed a new board member to replace a previous one at the last minute on Friday. So, wait, you're having a last minute appointment? Maybe I don't know what the deal here is. Maybe I'm reading it into it a little too much. But to me, it seems a little sketchy that they would go from unanimous to 3-2 after one person gets replaced, again, on something that is obviously unconstitutional. Sketchy. And look, I'm not the only one who thinks so. Actually, Republican Attorney General Gentner Drummond, he's like, yeah, I'm not buying this at all. Quote, "The approval of any publicly funded religious school is contrary to Oklahoma law and not in the best interest of taxpayers." This is a Republican. Credit where credit is due. He also says it's extremely disappointing that board members violated their oath in order to fund religious schools with our tax dollars. In doing so, these members have exposed themselves to the state to potential legal action. True. Again, I may not agree with Mr. Drummond on a lot of policy issues, but we both agree unconstitutional AF. Okay? So now the ACLU and the Americans United for Separation of Church and State are now, as a result, preparing a joint lawsuit calling this religious indoctrination. I'm going to give you a statement here from Americans United CEO Rachel Laser, which, by the way, awesome. Quote, "It's hard to think of a clearer violation of the religious freedom of Oklahoma taxpayers and public school families than the state establishing the nation's first religious public charter school. This is a sea change for American democracy. State and federal law are clear. Charter schools are public schools that must be secular and open to all students. The Archdiocese argued first that the school would be a private entity, but it funded with taxpayer money, so you can't really have it both ways. If you're taking taxpayer money, then it can't be a private religious school, period. I'm not saying that private religious schools can't exist, or even public religious schools can't exist. It just can't be funded by the public. You want to do that? You want to have a school? Okay, fine. You want to do Christian education? Fine. Do it on your own dime, not on ours. Now, here's the thing. Obviously, they know it's unconstitutional. It's very, very clear. But also, they don't seem to care. Remember, the goal here is to put Christianity in public education and to replace public education with religious education. That's indoctrination. And again, they're trying to erode the separation of church and state. You've heard Lauren Boebert come out and say, "Oh, yeah, separation of church and state is all junk. It's not actually in the Constitution." Well, I know, a terrible Boebert impression, right? But here's the thing. First Amendment says, you shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or the free exercise thereof. I think it's pretty clear. And, of course, Jefferson, in the letter, Danbury Baptist, pointed out that that part of the Constitution, the First Amendment, basically sets up a wall of separation between church and state. That's interpreted from the Constitution by one of the people who wrote it. I mean, it seems to be pretty clear that you have a Constitution that says you cannot set up a religion by the state. And if you are funding with taxpayer public money a religious institution for religious purposes, education, that's clearly in violation. So, I mean, there it is. But the whole point, again, is to erode separation of church and state by putting it before the Supreme Court. The right is already setting the stage for this to, uphold the approval of Saint Isidore of Seville. And according to a Substack newsletter named Public Notice, they've cited cases that have already vastly eroded the separation of church and state. In 2020, for instance, the Supreme Court decided that it's unconstitutional for Montana to grant certain funding to public schools, but not religious schools, forcing states to fund religious private schools. And then last year, the Supreme Court protected the ability of a public school football coach to lead his students in Christian prayer following the games. So, yeah, they are setting this up. And obviously, the Supreme Court seems to be, again, it's under, right-wing control. And it's not looking good, basically. What you have here is a majority conservative Supreme Court that apparently doesn't seem to understand the Constitution that they're supposed to be the ones interpreting. Wanting to add religion to this. So all this stuff about, the schools are indoctrinating your children into, the latest thing is they're transing your kids. Not true at all. No, all of that is just projection. In reality, they're not against indoctrination at all. They just want to be the ones who are actually indoctrinating your kids. Okay. So, disastrous, right? Okay. Anyway. With that, that's it. I'm going to read some super chats here. Some comments here from the audience. LL, with a very kind $10, says, Mark Meadows has agreed to plead guilty to several lesser federal crimes in exchange for testimony under a limited grant of immunity. Gee, I wonder what that might be about. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Gabby Mathis, thank you for the gifted sub. Jonathan Leiter says, Jonathan Leiter, thank you also for the gifted sub, gifted membership on YouTube. Gabby says, I'm sick of hearing about Marge. We went solar, recycle water if it ever rains in Arizona. I'm worried about the younger generations. Unfortunately, Marjorie has a position of power. She has her committee assignments, and she's out there making arguments. And if you're not criticizing and picking apart those arguments and letting them stand unchallenged, then, I mean, that only seems to help her cause. Okay. Mistman, with a member comment, says, housing crisis, bad infrastructure, stagnant wages, medical bankruptcy, credit prisons, GOP, it's illegals and trans folk who threaten society. True. Star Carpenter asks, any chance of getting Mike Figueredo on as a guest? Yeah, I'll have to ask him. I'm sure we could work something out. Mike's a good friend of mine. So yeah, I'll reach out. It's been a while, by the way, since I've brought anybody on. This has been like busy for everybody, but yeah, I'll ask. I'll see if he's free. With that, that's all the super chats here from today. Thank you all again. Appreciate that. Facebook comment from Sukotachi says, that woman and the Americans who support her exactly why Americans in the country, I hate Americans in the country that they live in. Well, don't hate us all. There's a lot of us that are fighting against that, people like her. It may not seem like it, but again, the people who like her and support her are actually quite a small minority. And there's a lot of weird stuff that allows these people to get into these positions of power, gerrymandering. I would say the vast majority of Americans are good people that oppose people like Greene. It's just, unfortunately, the way that our system is set up, with the amounts, just ungodly amounts of political corruption, money in politics, gerrymandered, voting, the way that voting is set up, voter suppression. It's how these people get into power. But I do understand the frustration, and all that stuff. So I've asked Dr. Ritchie to bring you on a show. I think it would be a good show. Well, thank you to him and Tim. I'd love to go on and speak to Dr. Ritchie. Again, I honestly don't know what I could add to his commentary, because it is much better than mine. It's brilliant. And he's just a fantastic presenter and just incredibly smart. Smarter than I am. But I appreciate that, and trust me, I would be very honored to be invited onto that show. And thank you for that. Show's over. Back to scrubbing the coal.
Clean coal, meaning they're taking out coal, they're going to clean it.
Hey, let's not give them ideas, okay? Like they already want child labor. They want to bring back, they want to put the children into the mines. Not kidding. Bringing back child labor. Okay, anyway. Biden crime fan Lucidity. You know how much that has been just completely proven to be false. I'm not even a fan of President Biden. I think there is legalized corruption that's going on here. But as far as personal corruption goes, you haven't really proven anything on that. And it's fun to watch right-wingers go into circles over and over again, screaming, Biden crime family, he's directly implicated, and then presenting no evidence to prove it. It's weird. It's weird. And by the way, if there is actually something that's credible, okay, we'll get rid of him then. I don't like corruption. Yes, get rid of him. It's just you actually have to present proof. Like, bring it, please. Bring the evidence. For God's sakes, bring something real. We're waiting. Okay, anyway. Dr. Richie's channel attracts so many races. Wonder why. Not surprising. Not surprising. I'm thinking that there are people that get triggered. Oh, let's raid into the surfs today. With that said, again, thank you all. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
There's insanity in the control room. Who's got a hammer?
Oh, I'm sorry.
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.
Florida's ground zero for the nursing home. I mean, we're God's waiting room.
Stupid